WBT.
You're up. It's 5:05 and welcome into a Thursday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We are tracking some details this morning out of another Council of State meeting that happened earlier this week, and we'll talk this morning about the impacts that continue to be dealt with in Western North Carolina as it regards to small businesses. North Carolina's Labor Commissioner Luke Farley told the Council of State members earlier this week that small business owners in the western half of our state feel like every day is Groundhog's Day, of course referring to the 1993 Bill Murray movie. This is after devastation left behind from Hurricane Helene in September of this year. He relayed to the council, quote, "Those are their words, not mine. They feel like nothing changes and nothing really moves forward, and I told them that I would convey that." Farley recounted a recent visit he and senior staff made to the Spruce Pines area, specifically Lower Street. Spruce Pines, one of the areas that was hit incredibly hard by Helene. He told the Council of State, quote, "One business owner expressed something to me that really got my attention, and I think ought to be a concern for all of us, is that if they don't get their small businesses reopened soon, it is going to have a terrible cascading effect on those small towns in Western North Carolina." The business owner said to me, quote, "If the businesses don't get opened, the workforce that formerly staffed those businesses is going to move away in search of finding work elsewhere. Workers are customers, so the customers are going to be gone as well, and the tax base is going to be permanently eroded, and these towns are essentially going to be hollowed out. They will never be able to recover," ending quote there from Labor Commissioner Luke Farley. He said that unfortunately the same exact thing happened before with other small towns, pointing to Fair Bluff in Columbus County as an example. The town's population is half of what it was after the devastation by Hurricanes Matthew and Florence, and they don't want to see similar situations happening that were in eastern North Carolina. They don't want similar things to repeat in the western half of our state. He said, so getting the small businesses back up and running and making sure workers are able to get back to work and earn a living is key to recovery in the western half of our state. Small business owners in Spruce Pines told Farley that the biggest challenge in reopening their business is bureaucracy and red tape in terms of regulations for them to begin the process of rebuilding. He mentioned that while they were there, no work was happening in any of the businesses that were cleared and gutted. He said, quote, "There are permits and inspections and environmental assessments, and it goes on and on. So that's why I came away from that, is that the money is critical." He said, obviously we have to get funding out there, but money alone is not enough. What's going to help these towns rebuild? There has to be some regulatory reform that speeds up the rebuilding process so that people can put back what was there just as quickly as possible, so they can get their lives back together, so they can get their businesses open, and so that people can go back to work and get back to earning a living. Farley added that his department will focus on ensuring workers have jobs to return to and advocate for regulatory reform for businesses. North Carolina's Agriculture Commissioner Steve Troxler said that many faith-based organizations like Samaritan's Purse and other volunteers have shown up to work, but the lack of county inspectors has caused them to wait every day, slowing down the recovery process. And asked if the state could do something to remedy that situation. Asked if the state and those individuals in the small town there asked if the state could do something to remedy the situation. Secretary of State Elaine Marshall told the council members that her office emailed 25 counties affected by Helene to inform them about the Western North Carolina Small Business Initiative, which we talked about at this point over a month ago, that was created by the Dogwood Health Trust last fall. Small businesses with an annual revenue of up to and including $2.5 million were eligible to apply for grants of up to $50,000 from the program. She said that within an hour of sending that email, over 1,000 of them were opened, and many of them went through and clicked through the application window, which closed on February the 21st, back a couple of weeks ago. Democrat Governor Josh Stein noted that the $35 million grant program, a partnership of Dogwood, the Duke Endowment, and the state, has already issued some 989 loans, and 600 more grants are slated to go out as early as, well, this weekend. Stein said, quote, "The demand for the products has been overwhelming, and I appreciate the points from Mr. Farley. And we'll go back and look and see if there's anything that the state is doing to slow down the revitalization of these small businesses. But there's no question the cash is one of those issues," according to Governor Stein. So it's great to see. Obviously, the news is not great that small businesses and those individuals are struggling in regards to getting things back up and operational. But it is good news that it is rising to the level of Council of State meetings, and those discussions are happening within the Council of State, which is all of the top elected officials across the state. Labor commissioner, auditor, governor, folks of that nature. So we'll continue to keep an eye on it right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. With that, we do have a launch of a new dashboard focusing on recovery efforts in Western North Carolina. It is the WNC Recovery Dashboard, and it's part of Governor Stein's Recovery Office for Western North Carolina, or GROW-NC. It will provide an overview of work being done and includes a progress dashboard with the latest updates. Stein told Carolina Journal at the Council of State meeting, quote, "We want the people of North Carolina to know how the progress is going and that it's going to be long and slow work, but we are committed to doing that work as quickly and as well as we can. And this dashboard is insight into how we're doing because we want folks to be able to evaluate our work." Stein continued by saying, "I talked about urgency, focus, transparency, and accountability, and those are the values that are driving our approach to hurricane relief." During the Council of State meeting, he said that while there will be a lot of information on work that has been done, the flip side of every data point of work is that there's work that still is yet to be done. The governor conveyed that 84% of impacted roads are fully opened, telling the council that that's over 1,300 roads that have been reopened since the beginning of the storm, noting that 16% have not, and that's because the damage is so massive, noting that some of the hardest, most expensive jobs are the ones that are still left to be completed. He added that 5,700 plus households are currently in temporary housing programs, meaning that they do have a safe and warm shelter, but their homes have not yet been permanently restored. Thousands of cubic yards of debris have also been removed, but that is just a fraction, possibly a third of the total debris that is still on the ground from Hurricane Helene. He also thanked the North Carolina Department of Transportation for reopening Interstate 40 to two-way traffic near the Tennessee line. That happened over the weekend, talked about that earlier this week, and noted that half of all state parks and cultural sites have fully reopened. He relayed to his council members, "The state has made a request of our federal delegation to the tune of $19 billion, and we have requested $1 billion more from the General Assembly. The House moved its bill last night, and the Senate introduced its bill. All of that is a good start, and we will work out with the conference with what makes the most sense. But the underlying message is this: I want to let the people know that we're making progress, but it's just a start. This work is long-term, and it's going to be hard, but we all have to be there together." We'll have more details on this Western North Carolina Recovery Dashboard with Teresa Opeka from the Carolina Journal coming up here a little bit later on this morning. It's now 5:14 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. We'll get a look at your Thursday early morning commute. An update on traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you.
It's 521. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. State lawmakers in the North Carolina House of Representatives are moving forward a bill that would require schools to incorporate a daily Pledge of Allegiance and ensure prominent display of the United States and North Carolina flags. If passed, House Bill 186 mandates that local school boards, charter schools, regional schools, and laboratory schools require having the Pledge of Allegiance on their daily schedule within the first hour of the instructional day. Schools are also expected to prominently display both the United States and North Carolina flags in the classroom where available. The measure makes clear that participation in the pledge remains voluntary and no individual is compelled to stand, salute, or recite the Pledge of Allegiance while it plays. Beyond the classroom, House Bill 186 targets governing bodies within the educational system. The North Carolina State Board of Education, along with the leadership of public school units, will be required to start all regular special meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance as well. Representative Brian Biggs of Randolph County, the primary sponsor of the bill, said, quote, "A lot of times in education, we talk about mental health and things that children are going through. And I think the reason a lot of times we have the issue is because our foundations are not where they used to be. And I think things like the pledge and our Constitution, our North Carolina Constitution and the U.S. Constitution are those foundations that make us who we are, that make us proud of our country, proud of our nation." Biggs added that the bill is necessary because some entities are not reciting the Flag Code Pledge Amendment by Congress, which was signed into law all the way back in 1954. He pointed to the State Board of Education meeting from July, where Board member John Blackburn used a pared-down version of the pledge, saying, "I pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation indivisible with liberty and justice for all," which is obviously not the full Pledge of Allegiance. Biggs said, quote, "I will promise you the majority when you start messing with documents like our pledge, like our Constitution, and you take God and country out of them, you will have students leaving your schools. You will have parents pulling their kids. There is no need for this. The pledge is not a political statement." House Bill 186 passed the K-12 Education Committee by a voice vote and now makes its way to the House Judiciary Committee. We'll keep an eye on that. It is House Bill 186, and again, we'll keep an eye on it right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 523, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We are tracking details this morning out of the North Carolina Court of Appeals as it relates to journalists and getting access to ongoing investigations in regards to law enforcement and private security companies. To get some additional details on that this morning, Mitch Kokai with the John Locke Foundation joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Mitch, thanks for the time. Walk us through our main story here this morning.
Thanks, Nick. This is a very interesting story for those who follow journalists' access to information that's held by public law enforcement agencies. This all goes back to 2023 when a private security firm that looks out for some commercial properties in Charlotte called Allied University Security Services, AUS, is the abbreviation for the group. They were called to a property where a trespasser was relieving himself outside the building. And so the security guards arrive. They try to stop the guy. The guy tries to flee. And as he does, he shoots at the security guards. Security guards shoot back, hit the guy, and kill him. And so because it was a shooting, especially because it was a homicide, then the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department was called to the scene. And because of the circumstances, a reporter from WBTV, Nick Oxner, known to be an investigative reporter who follows a number of issues, wanted to get some information. And specifically, he was looking for the names and addresses of the security guards involved in this incident. Now, neither CMPD nor AUS would provide that information. So Nick Oxner, as he has done before, went to court to try to get the information. He said, look, the public records law says this is the type of information that should be provided. A trial judge said no. Nick Oxner went to the appeals court to try to get that decision reversed. And the appeals court, in a split decision this week, said no. The chief judge of the appeals court, Chris Dillon, joined by Judge John Tyson, were the majority. And they basically said, look, what AUS was there to do was to investigate the trespassing. The information that's been provided because of that incident has been provided. That's all that the law requires. CMPD, the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police, they were the ones who were investigating the shooting. They provided all of the information that they're required to provide under the law, and that's all you get. You can't go beyond what the law requires. The dissent in this case was from Judge Toby Hampson, who said, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This was all really one incident, the trespassing and the shooting. And so this information squarely falls under what is required to be released. Not only would the security guards be involved as officers, and because they provide security under the direction of in compliance with the Attorney General of the state, they are considered a public law enforcement agency, even though it's a private group. Not only is that the case, but they could be described as witnesses to the shooting. And in that case, their information should be provided. So it's entirely possible that this controversy is not over yet, because depending on Nick Oxner's interest in taking this all the way to the state Supreme Court, it could get there, and we could get some sort of definitive ruling from the state's highest court on this, especially since there was such a strong split in the Court of Appeals, with two judges saying, no, this is not information that's required to be given, and one judge saying, yes, it really seems like this is information that should be provided. My guess is that if this case doesn't go to the state Supreme Court, an issue like this at some point will have to go to the highest court in the state, just so we'll have more clarity on what information a private security group that does operate under the Attorney General's permission, what sort of information they would have to provide to journalists.
Well, and I want to ask you a little bit more about that. So if this was completely done by the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, if we remove this private security firm, Mitch, would he have been able to get the names and the information of those responding officers? Is this becoming more confusing because it is a private security firm, even though they are operating under the jurisdiction of the AG's office? Does that kind of throw the monkey wrench into the mix here?
It's not entirely clear to me that you would still have the names of the officers released. My guess is that would be true, because typically when you do see police that are involved in incidents of this sort, you do find out the names of the officers. I'm not sure if they give their addresses, but you certainly get the names of the officers involved. And the fact that this is a private security outfit, this AUS is not the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police, does add a new wrinkle into it. Now, all three of the appeals court judges, and apparently all parties, agree that AUS is treated in some respects as a public law enforcement agency because of the way that it operates, having this relationship as a public police company from the Attorney General's office. But there is that complication of how much information has to be provided. And is it different because what AUS was responding to was just the trespassing, whereas it was CMPD that was responding to the shooting, and the information that was from the shooting? Does that only come from CMPD, or because AUS was involved, does AUS also have to provide the same type of information that CMPD would produce? The dissent in this case suggests that yes, AUS is just as involved in this as CMPD, and it's one long incident, the trespassing to the shooting, not two separate incidents, the trespassing handled by the private company and the shooting handled by Charlotte Mecklenburg Police. My guess is this is the type of case that if the state Supreme Court really wants to wade into this and say with more clarity what type of information has to be provided and not, that they would take this case up.
Well, and presumably if they were to do that, this would have huge effects across the state of North Carolina. Mitch, anybody that's been to any large shopping complex has likely seen one of these similar security companies, whether it's a a Walmart or a major shopping mall, these companies are all over the place across the state. And obviously situations like this do occur where you have these private security firms protecting the property or the individuals visiting those various businesses. So potentially some major changes to come, regardless of depending on what the Supreme Court decides to do with it. Mitch, it's a great update this morning. Thanks for the details. You can read more on this story by visiting carolinajournal.com. Mitch Kokai joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:31, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Another look at traffic on your Thursday morning commute, an update with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick.
It's 5:37. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. We are tracking some DMV news across the state this morning. The North Carolina Division of Motor Vehicle could soon see a major revamp that involves taking it out of the umbrella of the Department of Transportation. This comes following years of complaints over long wait times and ongoing dysfunction. With no notable improvements in sight, Representative Jake Johnson, the Republican out of Polk County, is being pushed to overhaul the DMV in the latest crackdown on the infamously mismanaged state-run agency. In a recent House Oversight Committee meeting, Johnson slammed the ongoing failures and hinted at a potential legislative fix. He said during the meeting, quote, "We've brought them before House Oversight multiple times and still little has improved. Perhaps with a change in leadership, now is the time to explore more wholesale changes and removing the layers of inefficiency in terms of the bureaucracy." The suggestion came just a couple of days after DMV Commissioner Wayne Goodman announced his plan to resign. Johnson told the Carolina Journal that state leaders are in the beginning stages of discussing the DMV revamp. He explained that it could potentially involve assigning the General Assembly and the governor a role in choosing several key personnel to manage DMV. Telling Carolina Journal, quote, "This is not going to happen overnight, but we've got to make some drastic changes. This has been an ongoing problem for way too long." The main difference would be administrative functions would no longer need to be signed off by the Department of Transportation. Jake Johnson explained that the administrative change could clear the tedious chain of command, which is a factor in the frustration of customers and legislators alike. He said, quote, "When you have layers and layers of buffers to get real answers, that is unacceptable. We get hundreds of complaints, and when the commissioner takes responsibility, perhaps he should have the ultimate authority instead of having to run it up the chain to get things done." Notably, the revenue structure would remain the same under any proposal, allowing DMV funds to continue funding DOT. Amid ongoing scrutiny for customer complaints and other operational problems, the DMV launched a kiosk pilot program last year in an effort to improve operations. It also introduced other improvement efforts like hiring more than 250 new driver's license examiners across the state and expanding its hours of operation. We'll have some additional details on DMV coming up here in a little bit. That was also a topic of discussion at the Council of State meeting that happened earlier this week as well. It's now 5:40. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. We are continuing to keep a close eye on Western North Carolina relief as it relates to cleanup and recovery efforts from September of last year when Hurricane Helene devastated many portions of the western half of our state. To get some additional details this morning on a new public dashboard, Teresa Opeka, CarolinaJournal.com, joins us this morning on the News Hour. Teresa, appreciate the time. Data and transparency, that's everything nowadays. Tell us a little bit about this dashboard.
Sure. Thanks so much, Nick, for having me. So it was announced at Tuesday's Council of State meeting that there was a new dashboard, new website. It's called WNC, or Western North Carolina Recovery. It is part of the Governor's Recovery Office for Western North Carolina, otherwise known as GROW-NC. And what it's doing, it's providing an overview of the work being done and includes a progress dashboard with the latest updates. Case in point, they have updates on who's living in temporary housing while their houses are being either repaired or rebuilt, things of that nature. I know I did speak to Governor Stein after the Council of State meeting. He says, so, they want to be transparent. They want to give people the most up-to-date information. This is something that he wants to do. He mentioned that during the meeting as well, accountability, which is a good sign for the state after, pointing unfortunately to Eastern North Carolina with NCOR. So we're starting off on the right foot, and if people can get a better viewpoint of what is going on at least a weekly basis, I think.
Yeah, and again, that website for folks that want to check it out, it's wncrecovery.nc.gov, where you can view the dashboard and get some of that real-time information that is being provided by the state. Teresa, you brought up Encore, you brought up the issues of the past. I guess having something like this out in the public hopefully will rise the public confidence in regards to, is the state of North Carolina capable of handling hurricane relief?
Oh, absolutely. Because there really hasn't been a lot of confidence the last few years when it comes to NCORE, which should say what stands for North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency. We've had numerous hearings in the state legislature oversight committee with the former head, Laura Hogshead, saying that, how come you're not further along with the progress? She says, I know, I'm so sorry. Blamed either supply chain issues, COVID, what have you. There was just numerous issues she would blame it on, except she said she'd take responsibility, but she really didn't take the blame per se. But needless to say, there's still over 1,000 homeowners that need homes nearly a decade after Hurricanes Florence and Matthew. So now the state's trying to do a better job. And as you've been seeing also, as last week, it was Representative Brendan Jones issued the bill that's going to help hopefully close out NCORE, called for a lack of, it's an acronym, Cooper Accountability Act, basically kind of proving a point. There is more to that name. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but it has basically, it was under Governor Cooper who started NCORE. So now they're trying to get this all wrapped up, try to give them more money, get that situated, and now hopefully completely focus everything on Western North Carolina, which is going to take years and years to fix and just get that all taken care of.
Yes, the Closeout Operations Providing Emergency Relief Act, the Cooper Act that we talked about last week, Teresa. So I've got the dashboard pulled up in front of me. As you noted, it gives you some information on individuals still living in temporary housing. There's essentially three different sections. One deals with housing, the other infrastructure, and the third kind of economy and communities as a whole. And I guess having the data available is a good thing. But does that actually mean that there is progress being made? And does this guarantee that the work is actually going to be complete? Or can we just now see that in real time?
would like, I'm just going to preface this. I would like to say, I think you're going to be able to see this in real time. It all depends on who's updating the information on the website. For right now, it looks like the things they have, for instance, you mentioned about the economy. They have a Western North Carolina Small Business Initiative. So it shows how many applications were received for this. That's providing $55 million in grants. How many grants were awarded, funding dispersed so far. So I guess that all depends on who is updating it and how frequently they update it. I guess hopefully it would be updated on a weekly basis. So I guess, like they say, hope for the best. So far, so good. I mean, time will tell, but at least they're off on a good footing at this point.
Now, there's another dashboard that is available from a different state agency that's also dealing with Helene, that of the state auditor's office. We talked about that back a couple of weeks ago. At this point, that dashboard is also available at auditor.nc.gov/Helene, and that's tracking some of that similar information as well. Teresa, do you think it's accurate to say in the age in which we're living right now with the technology available that this needs to essentially become the standard for a way in which government communicates with the populace?
Oh, I would most definitely agree. I mean, you're seeing it again. We see it every week. We see it every day with the Trump administration going with accountability, Doge finding everything that outlandish expenses, and how President Trump the other night in his address to Congress, he had that list going about all these different things going to different agencies or different countries. It was just staggering, the amount. That is the new gold standard, as far as I would agree with you, is getting this out there, getting transparency, holding organizations and agencies and states and the federal government accountable. And again, it all boils down to, it's taxpayer money. It's also people's lives that we're dealing with. It's not just some website or some line that you're reading in an article. It's people's lives and their money that we're dealing with.
Yeah, a really good summary there, Teresa. For folks that want to read your interaction with Governor Josh Stein, as well as get a link to the dashboard, where do they go and do that this morning?
They can head on over to carolinajournal.com.
Teresa Opeka joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 547, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll get another look at traffic on your Thursday morning, an update with Boomer Von Cannon.
Nick, the interstate's...
Hot. Good morning again. It's 5:51. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We are continuing our discussion on the Council of State as it relates to the Division of Motor Vehicles. The discussion around accountability and transparency continued earlier this week at that Council of State meeting as we learned some additional details from the state auditor in Dave Bolick as his office continues to audit others across the state. North Carolina State Auditor Dave Bolick told members that an audit of his own office is also underway. He said, quote, "We'll be releasing to the public a financial audit of our own office as well as a performance audit over the next 90 days. I really feel like that's important as we go into agencies and other institutions and organizations across the state performing audits. We want to be transparent about our own office and what we're trying to do." Bolick said he had a good initial meeting with officials from the Division of Motor Vehicle a few weeks ago. An audit of that office is officially underway and is something that he campaigned on before being elected to the office in November. Bolick told the Carolina Journal last year, quote, "We're going to start day one with a comprehensive audit of the Department of Motor Vehicle, DMV, and I'm not backing off of that. I think that the people of North Carolina deserve a well-funded, efficient DMV. It hasn't been addressed in many, many years, and because of that, I will conduct a comprehensive financial and economic efficiency audit of DMV, and we will come up with some solid recommendations to the legislature and the governor's office as to how we can make that agency work better for the people." Current DMV Commissioner Wayne Goodman announced last Wednesday that he would step down when his term ends, and the North Carolina House Oversight Committee grilled him at a hearing the next day about DMV's failures. Bolick explained to the council members how the audit was going. He said, quote, We've divided the Division of Motor Vehicle audit into multiple parts where we will drill down on specific parts of that particular agency to ultimately complete a floor-to-ceiling audit. And we're hoping that this helps your next commissioner with respect to some data points and some action items, as well as some common sense recommendations on how to improve that agency. He continued by saying that ultimately is our goal to have an impactful audit that shows real meaning, and we feel like this would help to set the standard for our office moving forward as to how we can do that. Bolick also said that his office has uploaded the initial version of the Hurricane Helene funding dashboard. We were just talking about some of that with Teresa Opeka in the last segment, noting that it marks a change in the role of functions of the state auditor's office, where they intend to work not just as auditors and with accountability, but as true watchdogs of taxpayer funds. He told the Council of State, quote, "We rolled that out and it's beginning to be more and more finished with data. Our ultimate goal is to have at least a weekly data update for members of this council as well as the general public to know exactly how funds are being spent both from the federal and state levels in terms of Hurricane Helene recovery. That in itself can work as a model for future big projects and future disaster relief efforts across the state." Bolick also thanked State Treasurer Brad Briner as they worked together over the last several weeks on some local government issues and cooperated together on that. He said he believed that it would help keep local municipalities viable in terms of their financial matters. Keeping on the theme of accountability, State Treasurer Brad Briner told the council that one of his first initiatives when he started was he requested his department's underlying divisions to report to him about one or two of their key accountability metrics. These metrics are now published on the front page of the department's website, and he also encouraged other members to do the same. He provided an update on the Helene Cash Flow Loan Program. They worked together with cities and counties in western North Carolina as his office built from the ground up a program over just 7 weeks to dole out millions of dollars to western North Carolina. Buncombe County is expected to receive the program's largest loan at over $8.4 million. That is set to be delivered this week. He asked members to provide their input on serious financial issues facing the state health plan, SHP, by attending the SHP Board of Trustee meeting that is happening tomorrow morning. So we'll see if other Council of State members attend that. The state health plan is projected to have a deficit of $507 million by 2026 and a whopping $1.4 billion by 2027. He said, quote, "This is not a let's hope we can fix this problem in a couple of years kind of thing. What we need to do is fix it today. We do not necessarily have all of the answers, so I invite everybody to participate in helping us solve this problem." He noted that while North Carolina ranks number one in terms of the highest healthcare premiums in the country, that is not a title to aspire to. The SHP board is likely to recommend increasing employee premiums from $25 a month or $300 a year to $550 a year as they deal with this huge shortcoming in terms of cash. Even though premiums will likely increase, Briner said the average company in the state charges around $1,700 a year, making SHP a great benefit for state employees. You can read more details on our website, carolinajournal.com. That's going to do it for the Carolina Journal News Hour. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.